I've got to know these ladies a little bit, as I said, over the years, and we're going to kick off with Zinhle. And I'm really excited for some of her story because I know, Zinhle, you are a businesswoman. You run, I'm still not exactly sure how many businesses you're involved with, but you run a business with your husband. You're also a mom of 3 teenagers, which anyone who's had a teenager knows, and if they're teenagers here, I apologize, but it is a bit tricky for us parents to make sure that we get from 13 to adulthood sometimes. I don't know if you can, I know it's also tricky being a teenager sometimes, but you're a mom of 3, and at the same time, I know that's not really your passion. Lies in giving out and doing stuff in the community. And so won't you share a little bit with us what you do and what you're really so passionate about?
Thanks so much, Jack.
Let's just check, yeah.
Okay, you're good.
Great.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jack. It's such an honor to be amongst these wonderful women here. You know, I for a moment, I just wished to sit and eat on the table and listen on the richness that is in this house. So yeah, I'm a businesswoman. I'm a CEO of a holding company called Flourish. We do printing on another unit. We do training, skills development training on the other unit. And then part-time, I sell petrol and diesel. Yes.
Petrol and diesel, there you go. So if you ever need petrol and diesel, now we know where to go. Awesome. And then apart from that, what were you doing like in March and April this year and whenever you get a chance?
Yes, you know, in my journey of growing, I realized that, you know, sometimes we get to think our fulfillment will get it somewhere. That's why we keep looking, keep checking. I think I've found where my heart gets fulfilled. That is to serve my community. So over 20 years now, we were doing it, but not formally. It's a pity my first child was meant to be here, but she's not. That's our first beneficiary. We've been having this heart of helping kids from grade 12 getting into tertiary, providing them with registration fee. We don't have much, but just sharing on what we have, at least get into tertiary, register and buy your books, and then we trust that government will take over from there. So we've been...
Can I stop you to show you a picture or two? We've got a picture of Zinhle's family. So her 3 kids, there they are, and her husband, because he's very much involved in all that she does. And then the tertiary education that she's speaking about, this is one of the beautiful workshops that you did.
Yes, what we do, we have different programs, but the one that is getting a big hoo-ha, I don't know how high, but it's one of those lucky ones. We do career expos where we invite institutions to come and tell these children what are they offering and what are they looking for. That is in prep at grade 12 or grade 11 for them to be able to get into tertiary. So we'll call all the tertiary institutions, even the corporates, you know, we call them to display. Because what we've realized is that you can only choose on what we have seen. You can't just choose something that you've never seen before. So we thought the exposure, that's the only gap that is missing, a correct exposure. Because we have this, the statistics, they are talking of high unemployment and all that. But you know what the truth is? A big chunk of that percentage, it's people who are unemployable. It's not unemployment. They are unemployable because the skill sets are not matching the demand. So that's a gap that we're trying to bridge with our communities.
Wonderful. It's exciting, isn't it? And Recently, you also mentioned that Star Aviation have got on board with what you're doing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's one of our exciting stories. Starlight Aviation, they are up down there in Virginia. They've come to partner with us in providing scholarship for kids who want to be pilots. They're going to be providing a scholarship on commercial licensing and drone operating. So it's one of our big stories these days. We are very excited about it. And as I was saying before, Jax, the problem is the exposure. Because I can sit in my township and look at the aeroplane, but it's too far. Not unless somebody's gonna bring it close to me, then I will know if I like it or not. So that's our exciting story. So yeah, as from next year, we are looking at getting 20 from the communities that obviously it's gonna be all around KZN. For now, we're gonna be training our own pilots.
I think one of the things that I find inspirational about you, Zinhle, as I mentioned, and I mentioned it on purpose, the fact that you're involved in business, you've got 3 children. For a lot of us, I think we feel like that's just plenty. And yet you're looking for ways to change the world, and it's literally, what can I do? How can I help? And you take that next step, and it makes a difference. Really wonderful. Can you just tell us about this lady on the screen? I know you said you went back to visit your family, and this lady's a special woman. Won't you tell us her story?
Yes, that lady is a special story of our own. As I mentioned, that it's been years doing this informally. So we will go to schools, motivate, and as a gift to the school, the principal and the governing body will identify children that are needy, but who can, you know. So she was one of those nominated from her school when we went there, and she happened to be our neighbor. We didn't even know her. And then this one time going home, we passed by this beautiful house that has just been built. And I'm saying to my husband, hey, Sibonelo, there's a new house there. Are those new neighbors, you know? And he's like, dude, I'm not sure what is going on in here. And then we decided, okay, we're gonna get home and ask his mom. And then we get there, Ma, we can see we got new neighbors there. And Ma is saying, no, it's not new neighbors. And then what? Who are they? And now she's narrating the story. No, the child that you helped with the registration, she is now a teacher. She went to UKZN and now she has built the home for her parents. So that was
wonderful. Thank you, Zinhle. That's really fantastic. Zinhle's got a whole lot more to her story, but we're going to move on to Sarah, because she's also got something beautiful to share with us. And Sarah, I came into contact with Sarah through a friend, but then my husband actually met up with her and he said, you will love what this woman does and how God is using her in the community. And so Sarah is involved with Farming God's Way. And I know you didn't plan to be involved with Farming God's Way. That wasn't your initial idea and thought. How did you stumble across Farming God's Way? And yeah, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, thanks, Jack. So I think for me, I live at Camp Orchards, which some of you know is just down the road. And when my husband and I got married and had our baby, his parents said to us, would you guys like to live here and take over from us and we'll move off? And we were like, wow, that's the best offer we've ever got. So we would definitely love to take you up on that. I think not fully understanding the enormity of what needed to be looked after. But when we got there, we kind of had this heart to turn it back into an agricultural farm. And with that, there were a couple of other things that we wanted to consider, and the one was to open up the property to our greater community. We felt like it had a bit of a closed gates feel or a kind of elite feel, and we really wanted to make it available to other people and not just to our tiny family of 3. And we also wanted it to serve our greater community, and that extends to the poor community, which is really close to our doorstep. So we didn't really know what that was going to look like. We were both, I think, lost in the wilderness while we had these weird thoughts, and we decided to start farming. And my mum at the time was attending All Souls Church in Umhlali, and they were hosting a Farming God's Way workshop for 3 days. And she said to me, come and do this Farming God's Way workshop. And I'm like, farming at church? Meh, that's not really for me. I want to go to like Babylon Storin or something like that. So I was like, no, and I kind of put it off, and she was like a dog with a bone. She didn't let it go. And I'm very grateful for my mom, who's just prayed over my life for my whole life. So she didn't drop it, and eventually she got someone from her home group to call, and off I went to All Souls to do Farming God's Way. And Farming God's Way is made up of 3 integrated spheres, and it's management keys, technological keys, and biblical keys. And I think for me, I was really interested in the technological keys because I've always been passionate about farming, although I'm a chef. I didn't have any knowledge on how to do it. And that's the reason kind of I went to the training. And then the management keys I was interested in, but kind of understood a little bit about it. And the biblical keys, I was like, sideline, don't have to pay attention there. So off I went to this training, and just was really arrested by the Holy Spirit. Went from that training to another vegetable training in PE, and got into a relationship with the Farming God's Way team. And quite like gung-ho on getting things done, came back, started putting gardens in, still not fully understanding this breakdown in relationship between man and God, and man and the land, and man with each other. Is the agricultural curse is actually a spiritual curse, and I still didn't have this understanding because I wasn't really interested in the biblical keys, and came home and just started to farm and stayed really connected to the relational team of Farming God's Way. And then Grant, who heads up Farming God's Way, I just kept in touch with him a lot on the phone, and I think he thought I was a bit of a crazy person, and eventually he said, well, you should attend our IFM week, which is called an in-field mentoring week, where for the week we train trainers, and during that week we also train the greater community. And for some reason in South Africa this takes place in KZN. So I said to him, yeah, I'll think about it, and put the phone down. And then I phoned back later, and I was like, you know what, I can host IFM week if you want me to host it at my house. And he was like, at your house? I was like, yeah, I think I have some space. So he was like, no, I don't know if it's right. He didn't really know who I was. I wasn't really that deep in my spiritual journey. And he was like, let me come and see you and see if it'll suit us. Do you have enough space for people to stay? I was like, yeah, I have some space for people to stay. He's like, I know you've put gardens in, but do you have some extra land for us to do like model gardens? I'm like, I can give you some extra land for model gardens. And so he flew to KZN to meet with us. And I think he was really searching for like our hearts behind Farming God's Way. And we were really on the starting block of this journey. And so he said, I'll stay the night with you and your husband and see how it all goes. So he came, looked at our property, and met with my husband. And yeah, we ended up hosting our first IFM training, the very next training, and that's how we've got involved.
Amazing. And basically, you're trying to help people learn principles, biblical principles, but you weren't yet probably a Christian.
Yeah.
And how to farm so that they can feed themselves, grow vegetables, and sell it to the community. Is that pretty much in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, yes.
Amazing. Interesting, hey, how God works. And God did a lot more than teach you about farming principles in that. He used Farming God's Way for your own lives. He did a real miracle. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So, so just to pick up where we left off on the last topic was, at this dinner that Grant was staying at our house, he kind of said to my husband, there's 6 biblical keys in Farming God's Way, which are really applicable across all of our lives in everything we do, and not just in the agricultural domain. And he kind of said to my husband, have you staked your claim here at Camp Orchards? And my husband, being quite like willing and open, kind of said, well, what does stake your claim mean? And he says to my husband, well, have you taken spiritual authority over your property and, like handed over your property to God? And my husband was like, no, I haven't actually done that. And then we like carrying on eating, and he says to my husband, my husband says to him, like, well, what does that even look like? And he said, you walk the boundary fence of your property, and you mark it with olive oil, and you pray over thresholds, and you pray over corner posts, and you just make the Lord the sovereign of everything that you are blessed with to be a custodian of. And my husband was like, no. Anyway, this guy leaves dinner, walks out the door, and my husband turns to me and he says, Sarah, I just want you to know, there's just no way I'm flicking olive oil all over our property. And so you can already see that our trajectory of our spiritual journey was kind of going in two different directions. So off he went to bed, and that was kind of the start of realizing how far apart we were in our marriage, and we were kind of going two different directions and really at war. And being part of Farming God's Way, I'll elaborate, but really has saved our family and our marriage. And we suffered a lot of hardships in the beginning, and I think we were both challenged, and we were both incorrect in the way that we were walking out our lives. I think my husband's sins and my sins were probably equal, but mine were less obvious. So he was wrong, and I was right. And we were kind of walking through a journey like that, and he was drinking an excessive amount, and there came a point where I found out that he was using drugs in a recreational manner, and it kind of like really took the wind out of my sails, and I felt like I didn't deserve this, and I didn't sign up for this, and this is so unfair. And I was really self-serving in the way that I was processing all of this. And he ended up having to go on a trip overseas, and while he was away, we kind of decided before that trip that this was probably going to be the end of our marriage, and we weren't going to carry on from here. We had a daughter and we had a little boy, and we were like, no, this isn't actually working. We don't know how to fix it. And God just timed everything in our lives. Like, if I look back, I wish I had a roadmap of like the miracles that he performed in our life, because my husband came back from that trip overseas and just like totally out of the blue walked into the kitchen and said, oh my word, I think I'm an alcoholic and I don't think I can drink anymore. And me being me in the flesh wanted to be like, well, I could have told you that. and for some reason, I just wasn't able to be me in the flesh. And I remember going to bed that night. I was also simultaneously listening to some podcasts that my friend Meg, who's here with me today, introduced me to. And they were marriage podcasts, and they were kind of like guidelines on being a wife, biblical mother, a biblical woman, and understanding this role a little bit better. And when I was listening to it, I was like super offended by the word, and I was like, this isn't what I want. I don't subscribe to this. I don't agree with this. And I remember kind of going to bed that night and thinking about one of the biblical keys from Farming God's Way, which is like, consider your ways. And if your life isn't bearing the fruit that you want to see, or isn't bearing the fruit that you want to see coming out of your garden, right? Like, consider your ways, not your husband's ways, and not someone else's ways, but consider your own ways. And I remember going to bed and for the first time, like really praying to God and asking to seek his face and not his hands, to really seek that intimacy that Gillian was referring to, that intimacy with him, and begging him to just come and fill my tank and fill my heart with his ways. And I didn't want to do it my way. I did want to do it my way, but I didn't really want to do it my way. And I had this like conflict of, I knew what I needed to do in faith, but I didn't want to do it. And I remember just pleading with him to say, listen, can you just stand in the gap? Because I didn't have the ability to do it. And I woke up the next morning to a WhatsApp from my mum. And the WhatsApp from my mum said, faith it until you make it. And it was just like such a big deal to get a message like that in the morning. Again, just God showing up every time that you need him. And I remember thinking like, well, I know now what a biblical woman looks like, and I know now what a biblical wife looks like, and I don't want to be it right now, but I'm going to fake it, and I'm going to faith it until I make it. And it was through those principles of farming God's way and just like having a better understanding of the word and relationship with the Lord that made me have the ability, because it wasn't me, it was the Holy Spirit within me, the ability to not be like justified in my anger and not be like wanting to be angry with my husband all the time, and create an opportunity to be gracious and kind and patient and a space for healing in our marriage. So it was like a really big deal what Farming God's Way did in our lives, because God laid that fertile soil in our garden so that our marriage could start from the very beginning and kind of grow from scratch. So that's kind of our
beautiful
story.
Again, I just find it so incredible. God is so kind that he gifts you with a property, that you have this, I believe, a God thought. How can I open up our property to the community and make a difference? And in it, God weaves his love and his redemption and his kindness into your story. It's beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate that. So the caps and hats that we brought, and we've kind of left over there at the hello desk. And if you have any that you haven't bought and you want to bring them, we thought one of the ways we could, Tin used the words last night, create shade for others, is Farming God's Way. They do a whole lot of different trainings. We've actually got some photos. Sorry, I've jumped from the hats already. We've got some photos of the Farming God's Way training programs, some of the ones that Sarah's done. Have you got those at the back there? Oh, there you go. There's Sarah. Probably also a little bit like me, more comfortable in your gardening clothes than up here on the stage. There she is, and she's training people on how to farm. So we are going to send those hats and caps that we've all brought today out with Sarah. When they do the next training, they're going to gift those women and men with caps and hats from Flourish Women's Conference. And we're going to get some photos and post those on social media, which I think is really fun and quite exciting, particularly because the hat I brought was sitting in my cupboard and no one was enjoying it. So I'm creating shade, and I think it's amazing that we can do that. And then also, there might have been an offering envelope on your chair. We wanted to get behind Farming God's Way. And if anyone is stirred in their hearts and you would like to contribute or give money towards Farming God's Way, that they can train more and more people to be able to adopt those principles, because it's way more than just farming. As Sarah said, it's about God breaking into the lives of the people that they're busy training. So those offering envelopes are on some of the chairs, and also as you go out, you'll see our offering boxes. We've put some extra envelopes on those offering boxes. If you'd like to get involved in that, there's absolutely no pressure, but we always like to create an opportunity for us as women to be able to reach out and give out. So I'm so thrilled about all of that. Sarah, and then I'm going to go back to Zinhle for one more question after that, because we've got a moment or two more, but I have no idea how much time we've got left because the timer changed. So I'm just going for it, but I'm on it. But what is your dream for Farming God's Way, and how do people get behind it? Apart from our hats and our caps and our offering, how do people get behind Farming God's Way? What would you say if someone said, I'm interested, I'd like to know more?
I think I'm the delay because I'm the chatty one, Jack, sorry. So I think there's like a number of ways. I think, well, to answer your twofold question, what we would like to see with Farming God's Way is Africa in general is considered like the begging bowl of the world. And I think I would love in my lifetime to see it become like the breadbasket of the world, you know, where we are a country that is so rich in resources and so rich in people. We have the ability to service the rest of the world while the rest of the world is actually servicing us with aid. So it would be really great to see that kind of a breakthrough in our lifetime. So that's a biggie. You know how you have like your big, medium, and small hit list. I think another way that people can get behind farming God's way is to actually attend training. And a lot of you are probably thinking, well, why would I attend a farming training? I don't farm, I barely have a veggie garden. And I think it's so crucial to know that farming God's way is rooted in Isaiah 58, and it's all about loosening and breaking and removing that yoke of poverty, and so that the poor can live an abundant life in Christ. And when you first hear that, you kind of think poor, right? You think, I am not poor, or I am poor. But what I've learned in the journey is it's really for those who are just needing a little bit of a boost, who are poor in spirit, and who just need that opportunity to just have that kind of breakthrough in their life. So if you don't have a vegetable garden and you don't plan on farming agriculture, I can still highly recommend, if you want to get involved, just attend one of our trainings or a training in PE. They happen countrywide. Our trainings get put up on the Camp Orchards Instagram, and that's kind of how we advertise. We usually get really full just from that. And that would probably be the best way you can get behind it, because the more people I think that are like walking out in faith and seeking God's face and really having that transformation of their lives, end up walking in a different light that those around them can see the change within them, and that is the change that I guess we would like to see in the world. So that's
Wonderful. Thank you. Zinhle, thank you. Just one final question to you. What would you say if someone asked, and I'm asking off the cuff, she hasn't rehearsed this, so you can take a moment if you need to think, but what would you say if I said, how can you encourage people to change the world? What is your message to every single one of us on how can we make a difference? How can we get involved? I know that's exactly what Sarah's saying is your heart and your passion, to alleviate poverty, to educate people.
I will say, actually, now that you just asked the question, I'm reminded of a song which you used to, okay, I'm not going to tell my age.
You can, it's women. We're okay with it.
But during my days...
23.
Yay.
With teenage children.
During my days, we used to have assemblies at school, you know, the morning prayer and all that. And there was a song which used to be sang, which was saying, bright in the corner where you are. It's our wish to change the world, but the world is too big. But if you can make an impact in that little corner where you are, if all of us can make that impact in the little corner where we are, can you imagine, this is the whole world. The world will be changed. So that's my message, to say we wish for bigger things. We do have these big dreams, and sometimes they get shattered and you're like, oh my God, yeah, it was a real dream, you know, and you wish, no, let that one not wake up, you know, because it's just unreal. But every dream, I believe, is real.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to you both. I know it takes a lot to get up here and to share so vulnerably. Thank you. We really appreciate you both.